I'm Jackie. I would like to share a little story about my mom. My mom was a farm wife. I had 3 brothers, and I was the only girl. Probably about 14, 15 years before my mom died, she was diagnosed with breast cancer. And so she underwent the mastectomy and chemo. She would go into remission for a few years, and then eventually she had to have a mastectomy on the other side and more chemo. I knew medical treatment was way advanced, and I really did think she was going to get cured and life was going to be good. I really thought my mom would live to be at an old age. Longevity lived in her family. Her mom, my grandmother, was still alive, and my great-grandma lived to be 104 years old. In fact, 2 of my children were living in a 5-generation family at the time. So there was a lot of family history of cancer on my mom and her dad's side, so with my grandpa's side. Mom's oncologist suggested and got us into our family into a grant for genetic testing, and so Mom wanted that done. It came back that Mom did have a mutation in her BRCA1 gene, and so the reality was going to sink in. Mom probably was never going to be cured of her cancer. She may go into remission, but the chances are of it coming back was high probability. And so we had to deal with that, and after that, Mom lived life to her fullest when she could. She was actively going to grandkids' activities, baseball games. She was out on the farm. She was bowling when she could. And the reality also had to sink in with my grandmother. My grandmother already lost her other daughter, who she only had my mom and my aunt. And so it was a little rough on my grandma to realize this. Soon she was diagnosed with ovarian cancer, and we knew that was going to be coming. She took more chemo, went into remission. Eventually the options were running out just because she's had so many different chemos in the past. And being a nurse from different settings, and one of which being a hospice nurse, I felt that it was time to maybe start those conversations about, Mom, what are your wishes? If they can't treat you any longer, what do you want done? And we started those conversations about hospice and end-of-life issues, and she was very open. She was realistic, in which we had to be. We did not want to hold on to false. Mom was getting tired of the doctor visits. She just really wanted her life back. She was tired of the chemo side effects, losing her hair, and eventually one day she called me up and said, you know, I just don't feel good. She was short of breath. Her abdomen was distended. She had abdominal discomfort, and I, being a nurse, of course, checked for bowel sounds, and there was none. So her doctor admitted her to the hospital. So she's in the hospital. I could tell by the physician's expressions that they weren't going to do surgery. They already told us that. I think they were kind of puzzled on what to tell us. I think they wanted to tell us some bad news, but they were uncomfortable with it. But what they didn't know is that Mom and I already had these conversations. We've already talked about hospice for when this time comes. And so Mom and I visited, and when they were in making their rounds, we were the ones that brought up hospice. And as soon as we did, they seemed relieved. It's like, oh, you know about hospice. And they did not have to initiate that conversation. And so, home with hospice, we went. At home, Mom started feeling better after a couple months, and she was active. She was on her bowling league. She was going to the kids' baseball and softball games. She was out on the farm as much as she could, and suddenly she understands she was still in hospice, even though death may not have been imminent. But one day she decided she wanted to go back to her oncologist. Now that she's feeling good, maybe they'll give her some chemo. And so I knew the oncologist would not give her any more chemo because there was no more chemo to give her that was going to work. But I felt like she needed to go in and talk to the doctor about that and hear it from him. And I knew she was kind of bargaining. And so we made her appointment 3 days later. Well, 3 days later, I came to pick her up for her appointment, and she told me she canceled that appointment. And she goes, I don't know why I thought I should go through chemo again. I'm feeling the best I have felt for years. I want to use this time to live my life. I am so glad that I had the opportunity to visit with my mom and my grandma about those end-of-life decisions, and I wanted them to know that what they wanted is what we will support. So Grandma did end up outliving her 2 children. She just recently passed away, being 3 months short of turning 100 years old. I was also helping her make her decisions as her power of attorney for health care, and we were able to keep her in the nursing home under hospice, and we were there at her bedside when she passed away as well. And so those are some precious and some cherished times that I'm glad, and she was glad that we were there. So having those conversations made it a lot easier when the time does come when death is imminent. The family is on board. There was no discussions about we have to take Mom to the hospital, we have to take her to the doctor. Everybody had the understanding, this is hospice. We're not going to cure anymore. We're going to keep Mom comfortable and Grandma comfortable. And that gave me a peace of mind that Mom and Grandma were getting what they wanted. It was about them and not us. I'm Jackie Trojan, and this has been my caregiver journey.